The village does not announce itself. There are no towering walls, no gates carved with symbols of power, no roads designed to impress those who arrive if you didn't know where to look. You might pass by without ever realizing it was here, Nazareth, tucked into the hills of Galilee, hidden among ridges and shallow valleys. It exists almost quietly as if it prefers not to be seen. And in a way, it has always been like that. The morning begins before the sun fully rises. A pale light stretches slowly over the hills, touching the edges of limestone homes that blend into the landscape so naturally they almost disappear. The air is cool, carrying the scent of earth, wood smoke, and distant vegetation. You stand just outside the village. From here, Nazareth looks small. Not just modest, but nearly insignificant. A cluster of perhaps a few hundred people, no more. Homes scattered along the slope, built from local stone, uneven, practical. There is no grand layout. No central plaza designed with symmetry. Everything here is shaped by necessity. And yet, this is where he grew up, not in a city of influence, not in a place of learning or prestige, but here, you begin walking toward it. The ground under your feet is dry but firm, marked by narrow paths formed over years of repeated use. Terraces line parts of the hillside, simple agricultural work that allows crops to grow in a landscape that doesn't easily give itself away. Olive trees dominate the view. Their twisted trunks and silvery leaves catch the early light in a way that feels almost timeless. Some of these trees are old, very old, passing through generations of hands that have pruned them, harvested them, depended on them. Because this village survives on what it can grow and what it can make. You enter Nazareth without crossing a boundary. There is no clear line between outside and inside. Just a gradual shift, the paths become narrower. The homes closer, the sounds more defined. A door opens, a woman steps out, carrying a clay jar, moving toward a water source you haven't yet seen. Her movements are practiced, efficient. This is routine. Another figure appears in the distance, an older man leading a small animal, perhaps a donkey, toward the lower part of the village. There is no rush, but there is purpose. Nazareth wakes slowly, but deliberately. You notice the homes more closely now. They are not uniform. Some are partially carved into the rock itself, using the natural terrain as structure. Others are built up with stacked stone, reinforced with wooden beams and covered with packed earth roofs. Openings are small, windows are minimal. This is not about aesthetics, it is about survival. Heat must be managed. Cold must be resisted. Everything serves a function. You pass by one home where the doorway is low. You have to dip your head slightly to look inside. The interior is dim, but you can make out shapes. Storage jars, woven mats, simple tools. This is not poverty in the way modern eyes define it. This is normal. This is life. And within these spaces, generations are raised. You continue walking and the sounds begin to layer. Grinding stone, wood being shaped. Voices soft, conversational, children, always children. They move through the village freely, barefoot, familiar with every path, every corner. There is no separation between work and life here. Everything happens together. And then you hear it, the sharp, rhythmic sound of tools against wood. You follow it because this is different, more deliberate, more focused. It leads you to a small open workspace, partially shaded, where a man is working with precision, wood shavings scatter across the ground. Tools lie nearby, simple but effective. This is a craftsman, a techton. Not just a carpenter in the modern sense, but a builder. Someone who works with wood, stone, structure, creating what the village needs to function. And here is where he would have spent much of his time. Jesus, not as a teacher. Not yet, but as a worker, a son, learning, watching, doing. You don't see anything extraordinary here. No visible sign that this space carries historical weight. No indication that the one who worked here would one day walk through Jerusalem, stand in the temple, speak words that would outlive empires. Here, he is just part of the village, and that is what makes it so powerful. Because nothing about Nazareth suggests what will come from it. You watch as the work continues, measured, intentional. There is skill here. Attention to detail and understanding of material, of balance, of structure. This is not rushed labor, it is careful. And it reflects something deeper, because in a place like Nazareth, work is not separate from identity, it is part of it. You step back and continue through the village. The path leads slightly upward now, giving you a wider view of the surrounding area. And this is when you realize something important. Nazareth may be small, but it is not isolated. From this elevation, you can see beyond the immediate hills. Trade routes pass not too far from here, paths that connect larger cities, regions of influence, centers of culture. Sepphoris, just a few kilometers away, a growing city, Roman-influenced, architecturally advanced compared to Nazareth, and that proximity matters. Because it means this village is not completely cut off from the world. Ideas pass through, languages overlap, Roman presence is not dominant here. But it is known, felt, understood, and that creates tension. Not visible in every moment, but present. Because Galilee is not a quiet region politically. It carries history, resistance, expectation, and even in a small village like Nazareth, those undercurrents exist. You move back down into the heart of the village. The day has begun in full now. More people are outside, work intensifies. Conversations grow, but still, there is no sense of urgency driven by ambition. This is not a place where people are trying to rise. It is a place where people are trying to live, to provide, to endure, and yet, within this ordinary rhythm, something extraordinary is growing, not visibly, not loudly, but steadily. Because the one who walks these paths, who works with these tools, who lives within these walls, is absorbing everything, the language, the culture, the struggle, the simplicity. And all of it will matter later, much later, but for now, Nazareth remains what it has always been, small, quiet, overlooked, and completely unaware of the significance it holds. By midday, the village is fully alive. The cool stillness of early morning has given way to heat rising off stone and soil. Sunlight pours into Nazareth without obstruction, settling into every surface, walls, pathways, rooftops, until the entire village seems to glow in pale, dusty tones. Shadows shrink, movement slows slightly. But work does not stop, it never truly does here. You walk through the central paths again, now more crowded than before. Women gather near a shared water source, spring-fed, well just beyond the main cluster of homes. Clay jars rest at their feet as they talk, laugh, exchange news. Water is life here, every drop matters, and the act of drawing it is not just labor, it is rhythm, community, connection. You watch as one woman lowers a vessel carefully, the rope sliding through her hands with practiced ease. She pulls it back up, steady, controlled, balancing the weight without spilling. This is learned skill, generational, and nearby, younger girls watch closely. Because they will carry this soon, you continue past them, deeper into the movement of the village. The sounds are layered now, grain being crushed between stones, fabric being worked on simple looms, animals shifting restlessly in shaded corners. Everything is functional, nothing is wasted. Even the smallest object has purpose. You pass a group of men repairing a low stone wall along the edge of a property. Their hands move methodically, placing, adjusting, reinforcing, no mortar, just careful balance. Stone against stone, each piece chosen, each placement intentional. It's not just construction, it's understanding. And in a place like Nazareth, that understanding is survival, because the land does not give easily. The soil must be worked, the terrain must be adapted. Nothing here is effortless, and that reality shapes the people who live within it. You begin to notice something else now. Conversations shift when certain topics arise, voices lower, glances are exchanged. Because even in a quiet village, the larger world presses in. Rome is not physically present in every moment here, but its influence is. Taxes, authority, the presence of power that exists somewhere beyond the hills, but still affects daily life. And then there is something deeper, expectation, not spoken loudly, not discussed openly in every corner, but present. Because the people here know the stories, they know the promises. They know what has been said about a coming king, a deliverer, someone who will restore what has been lost. And in a place like Nazareth, those hopes are not theoretical. They are personal because life is hard, and when life is hard, hope matters more. You walk toward the edge of the village again, where the land opens slightly into fields. A few figures are working there tending crops, adjusting irrigation channels, watching the condition of the soil. It is quiet here, more isolated, and this is where you begin to understand something else about Nazareth. It is a place of hidden formation, not public influence, not visible leadership, but preparation. Because everything about this environment shapes a person differently, there is no applause here. No recognition, no stage, only life as it is. And that kind of life produces depth. You return toward the center once more, drawn again to that workspace you noticed earlier. The sound of tools continues, steady, unchanging. You see him again. Still working, still focused. There is no sign that he feels limited by this place. No sense of frustration, no visible desire to escape. Because this is where he is meant to be, for now, and that matters. Because it tells you something about timing. Nothing here is rushed, nothing is premature. The years spent in Nazareth are not accidental, they are foundational. Every interaction, every task, every observation, it all builds towards something that has not yet been revealed. You watch as he pauses for a moment, wiping his hands, looking out beyond the immediate work. Not distant, not distracted, just aware. And for a brief moment, it feels like he sees more than the village itself, more than the hills, more than the ordinary rhythm of life around him. But then the moment passes and he returns to the work. Because that is what this season requires, faithfulness in the unseen. You step back again, letting the full picture come into view. Nazareth in motion, people moving through their routines. Children learning, adults working, conversations unfolding. Nothing about it stands out. Nothing about it demands attention, and yet, everything about it is shaping something that will one day demand the attention of the world. The sun begins to shift slightly now, moving toward the western horizon. The heat softens just enough to make movement easier again. The pace of the village changes, not dramatically, but noticeably. Work begins to wind down in some areas. Meals are being prepared. Smoke rises again from small cooking fires. The smell of bread, fresh, warm, immediate, spreads through the air. You pass by a home where a woman is kneading dough, her hands moving with rhythm and strength. The texture of it changes under her touch, becoming something new, transformation, simple, everyday, and yet, essential. Inside, voices gather, families begin to come together. Because in Nazareth, the day does not end alone, it ends together, and that matters. Because this is where identity is reinforced, where stories are told, where values are passed down. And somewhere within these homes, within these moments, he sits, listens, speaks, grows, not as someone separate from the people, but as one of them, and that is what makes this place so important. Because Nazareth is not just where he lived, it is where he became. Not in identity, but in experience, in understanding. In connection to the very people he would one day speak to, teach, and transform. You feel the weight of that now, because it changes how you see everything. This village, small, quiet, overlooked, is not insignificant. It is essential, and as the light begins to soften further, as the sounds of the day begin to settle, you realize something that most would have missed at the time: the greatest story ever told spent most of its life here, unseen, unknown, and completely ordinary. Evening settles over Nazareth without ceremony. There is no signal, no bell, no formal ending to the day. The light simply softens, shadows stretch, and the village begins to draw inward. The heat breaks first. A cooler breeze slips through the narrow paths, brushing against stone walls that have held the sun all day. The air changes lighter now, easier to breathe. And with that shift, the rhythm of life changes too. You walk slowly through the village as the sky turns from gold to deepening blue. Fires are lit again, but now they are not for labor. They are for gathering, for food, for presents. Families begin to come together in small spaces, courtyards, rooftops, interiors barely lit by oil lamps. The sounds are different now, quieter, more intimate. Laughter, conversation, stories. This is the part of the day where the village becomes most human. Not defined by work, but by relationship. You pause near one of the homes, just close enough to observe without intruding. Inside, a small group sits together, bread is passed, hands reach. Voices overlap gently. There is no excess here, no abundance in the way larger cities might measure it. But there is enough, and that matters more. Because in Nazareth, survival is shared, no one thrives alone. And that creates something deeper than wealth ever could. Dependence, community, belonging. You step back and look upward. The sky has darkened now, and just like in Bethlehem, the stars emerge with clarity that feels almost overwhelming. No artificial light dims them, no noise competes with them. They stretch endlessly across the sky, steady, unchanging. And beneath them, Nazareth rests, but not completely. There are still voices, still movement, still life unfolding in small, quiet ways. You walk toward the edge of the village again, where the elevation gives you a wider view. From here, the surrounding hills are barely visible soft outlines under the starlight. And beyond them, the world larger, more powerful. More visible, cities where decisions are made, where authority is exercised, where names are remembered. But not here. Nazareth is not remembered. Not in this moment. Not in this time. It exists beneath the awareness of most of the world, and yet, it holds something that the world will one day turn toward. You feel that contrast now more than ever, because everything about this place suggests obscurity, and everything about what will come from it suggests impact. You return your attention to the village itself. Lights flicker faintly from within homes. Shadows move across walls, and somewhere, in one of these simple spaces, he is here, not teaching crowds, not performing signs, not drawing attention, but sitting, listening, living, growing. There is something deeply important about this part of the story, because nothing about it is dramatic. Nothing about it demands recognition, and yet it is essential. Because this is where understanding is formed, not in isolation from humanity, but immersed in it. He knows this life, not from a distance, but from within, the labor, the limitation, the quiet struggles that never make history books, the rhythms of ordinary existence. And that changes everything about what will come later. Because when he speaks, he will not speak as someone disconnected. He will speak as someone who knows. You walk again past the workspace. Now empty, the tools are set aside, the wood rests where it was last shaped. Nothing is happening here now, but even this stillness feels meaningful. Because it represents something that most people overlook: preparation. Years of it unseen, uncelebrated, unrecorded, and yet, absolutely necessary. You begin to understand something deeper. Nazareth is not where the story becomes visible. It is where it becomes real, where it takes root, where it forms quietly before ever being revealed publicly. And that kind of formation cannot be rushed. You sit for a moment on a low stone edge, letting the full scene settle around you. The night, the stars, the faint sounds of life continuing behind closed doors. And the overwhelming sense that something extraordinary is hidden within something completely ordinary. Because if you didn't know, if you were just passing through, you would see nothing special here. No reason to stop, no reason to remember this place. And that is exactly why it matters, because it reveals something fundamental about how this story unfolds. Not through a spectacle, not through immediate recognition, but through time, through patience. Through a presence in places the world overlooks, the night deepens, voices fade. One by one, the lights go out, Nazareth sleeps, and with it, the one who will one day awaken the world. But not yet, not here, not now, because this moment, this season is still hidden, still quiet, still unfolding beneath the surface. And as you stand once more at the edge of the village, looking back at the stillness that has settled over it, you realize something that reframes everything you've seen, the most significant life ever lived. Spent most of its time in a place no one was watching. And that changes how you see both the place and the story, because it means that what matters most does not always begin where people are looking. Sometimes it begins here. In silence, in obscurity, in a village like this, morning will come again, just as it always does. The same pale light will spill over the hills, the same doors will open, the same routines will begin, water drawn, tools lifted, bread prepared, voices exchanged in the quiet rhythm of another ordinary day. And Nazareth will continue unchanged, unnoticed, at least on the surface. Because by now, you understand something the village itself does not. This place is not defined by what it shows, it is defined by what it holds. You stand at the edge of it one last time, watching the faint glow of pre-dawn begin to return. The stars fade slowly, giving way once again to the soft blue of morning. Nothing announces the significance of this moment. Nothing marks this village as different from any other scattered across Galilee. And yet, everything about it is different. Because of the life being formed here, quietly, patiently, completely, you walk back through the narrow paths, now familiar, the stone walls, the low doorways, the uneven ground shaped by years of footsteps. It all feels known now, and that's important. Because Nazareth is not meant to feel distant. It is meant to feel close, real, accessible. You pass the homes again, silent for now, but not for long. Within these walls, families will wake, stretch, speak, begin again. And somewhere among them, he will wake too, not to applause, not to recognition, but to responsibility, to work, to the same life as everyone else around him. And that reality carries a weight that is easy to miss. Because it means that for years, most of his life, nothing outward sets him apart. No visible sign, no public declaration, no moment where the village suddenly realizes who he is. He grows here in full view, yet completely hidden. And that tension, being present but unrecognized, is part of what makes Nazareth so powerful. You walk once more past the place where work happens. The tools are still there, waiting. Soon, they will be picked up again. Wood will be shaped, structures will be built. Practical things, necessary things, and he will be part of it, fully, not partially. Not symbolically, but genuinely, and that matters. Because it reveals something essential. Nothing about these years is wasted. Nothing about this place is accidental. Every moment contributes, every experience shapes. Every ordinary day prepares for something extraordinary. You step into a slightly higher position within the village, where you can see more clearly across it. The rooftops, the paths, the spaces where life unfolds. It's also small, so contained, and yet, from here, you can imagine something else. The future, not visible to the people here. Not even fully revealed to the one living it yet. But coming, the moment when this quiet life will shift. When the one who has lived in obscurity will step into visibility. When the teachings will begin. When the crowds will gather. When Nazareth will no longer be just a village, but a reference point. A question people will ask, can anything good come from Nazareth? You feel the weight of that question now. Because standing here, you understand why they would ask it. There is nothing impressive about this place, nothing that suggests greatness. Nothing that aligns with expectations of where something significant should come from, and yet, that is exactly the point. Because what comes from here will redefine what greatness looks like. Not power, not status, not visibility, but truth, connection, transformation, and it all begins in a place like this. You take a final walk through the village as the first real signs of morning begin. A door opens, a figure steps out. Another day begins, and everything looks the same. But it isn't, because time is moving, quietly, steadily, toward a moment when everything that has been formed here will be revealed. But for now, Nazareth remains what it has always been. A village, small, unremarkable, overlooked, and yet chosen. You reach the edge and stop, turning back one last time. The light now touches the tops of the homes, slowly working its way down, illuminating the village piece by piece. And in that gradual unveiling, you see it clearly, not with your eyes, but with understanding. That this place, this quiet, hidden place, is not the backdrop of the story. It is part of its foundation, because it shows you something that is easy to forget, that the most powerful moments in history are often built in silence. Far from attention, far from recognition, in places where no one thinks to look. And if you carry that with you, if you remember what Nazareth looked like, what it felt like, how ordinary it was, then you begin to see the story differently. Not as something distant, not as something removed from real life, but as something that entered fully into it, lived within it, and was shaped by it. And suddenly, that small village in the hills of Galilee doesn't feel so small anymore. It feels essential, it feels intentional. It feels like the kind of place where something world-changing could quietly begin, and for a long time, no one would even notice until it was impossible to ignore.